Truckers of Reddit, what's the craziest, scariest, or most bizarre thing you have experienced on the road or at a truck stop? I used to work with an ex-trucker who once had a woman commit suicide by jumping in front of his truck. He hasn't driven since, and now spends his time working with troubled suicidal people. He was never quite the same after that happened. Driving up to college for the first time, my mom got tired and wanted to pull over for a nap at a truck stop. While she slept, I people watched. A huge truck pulled up, one of those tricked out, well-lit and super shiny trailers, and a big, tattooed driver climbed out. Then he leaned back in to pull something out. It was a kitten, a tiny little white kitten. He played with that kitten on the truck stop benches for so long, happy as could be, giggling and smiling like I would have. It was the cutest juxtaposition I've ever seen. I'm a truck driver. I had a prostitute climb into my truck while I was sleeping. My truck's passenger's side door wasn't locked as well as I thought. I'd been hit in a parking lot by another truck and it bent the door in a little. I tested the lock and it seemed to lock and unlock fine, but that turned out to be wrong. It was around 1 AM and in my sleep I sort of vaguely heard my door open, so I was already starting to wake up. Then someone shook me by the shoulder. I jumped up and hit her in the face with my laptop. We got in this weird hair-pulling slap fight, and physically kicked her over the passenger's seat and out the door onto the pavement. I stood there half awake blinking at her through the windshield when she jumped up, flashed me her boobs, flipped me off, and ran away. Went back to sleep. Sort of. Woke up an hour or so later with someone knocking on my door. It was the police. She called them and told them she was my girlfriend and I'd beat her up and thrown her out at a truck stop. I believe they were getting ready to handcuff me when a few drivers from other trucks came over to explain she'd been knocking on truck doors all night and was there most weekends either knocking on doors or trying to climb into unlocked trucks. The cops didn't really say anything else to me. They just handcuffed her and drove away with her in the back. Plot twist. I'm female and I look nothing like the stereotypical ideal of the manly female trucker. She looked like a greasy beach ball with dead caterpillars for eyebrows. Also, I've been flashed innumerable times by men and women. I've seen a lot of wrecks and the bodies. I had someone throw a football from an overpass and bust my windshield once. I helped drag another truck driver out of his truck through his windshield after I watched it run off the road and catch fire. I watched a guy hit a buffalo once and the truck and buffalo sort of exploded everywhere. I got stuck in the snow bobtail once and a whole Amish family came out and pulled me out with horses. Then they gave me tons of food to take with me because the women said I was too skinny. I knew a guy that had a pet goat, monkey, and parrot all in the same truck. Too much weirdness without creating a wall of text. My dad drove long haul for years. One company he worked for had a yard right in the city. One night a homeless person tried to steal material from a stack in the yard and pulled the wrong piece. Stack came down and decapitated him. They found his headless body the next morning. Not me but my dad. He was a career long haul driver. The thing he said was the worst he's ever seen was he was driving along some interstate when a minivan cut off the truck in front of him. It's been a few years since I heard the actual story, but I think it was like lost control due to weather or highway hypnosis somewhere out west. Killed the entire family, blood and body parts scattered across the freeway. My dad had to physically restrain the other driver because after the shock set in he kept trying to run into traffic and kill himself. I've seen fist fights at the fuel islands over people not pulling up, a big deal for us drivers. Had an RV crawl up alongside me once in Indiana. I have a habit of looking over when folks get up alongside me to check and see if they are paying attention to the road or their phone or dozing off. Anyway, I glance over to see how old this couple in this RV may be. I was surprised to find the driver was maybe 30, tops. He looks over and smiles and as sure as God's got sandals the next second later a young naked woman is bent over the passenger side of the dash and is being, acted upon by another young naked woman with what appears to be a horse-shaped and sized rubber dong. Having seen this porno before, I clicked the cruise back a notch or two and let them go on. I was in deep South Texas coming out of Laredo. A Mexican truck, you can spot one easy when you know what to look for, starts coming up alongside me. He gets up next to me and no one is at the wheel. I see two straps on the wheel and can only assume the dude was attempting to drive from the sleeper with a set of reins. I backed way off and let them get on up ahead of me. Saw them 3 of these ass clones in one truck. Later at the border check on 35 in cuffs. I was running on Kansas Highway 96 out of Great Bend early one morning. Dawn was just peeking over the horizon back to the east. I rounded the curve out of town heading west when I see Bambi and the gang crossing the road. I must have about 12 or more of them. I get up in the middle of the road and lay on the air horn. They stop crossing, but they all start running along on both sides of the road in the direction I'm going. I get back on the throttle and just as I come up on the group, I see 2 of the deer on the north side deciding they now want to join the group on the south side. Reflexes kicked in and I jumped into the oncoming lane to avoid them. I saw one's face clear as day as my fender and door went past him. He didn't hit the front corner of my trailer or my drives, luckily. However, he did hit his head on the side of my trailer. It must have been enough to daze him as I watch him fall and get hit by my back hopper on the side. He went under my trailer tandems where he exploded. I was over gross weight so he didn't stand a chance. I pulled over about a mile up the road where it was wide enough to do so, 2-lane, and went to look over my trailer. I didn't see any marks on my trailer or hopper, nor anything much on the trailer tandems. The only thing left was a tuft of fur or 2 and blood dripping off both mud flap. R.I.P. retard Bambi. Not a trucker, but on the highway going from Maine to Killington VT, I saw a large bird swoop down right in front of a semi-truck. When I didn't see the bird come out on the other side, I was preparing to see feathers everywhere and a carcass to come bouncing out from under the trailer. Nothing. As I passed the truck, I looked over and saw a terrified turkey standing between the cab and the trailer like he was surfing. After a couple miles, I did get the driver to pull over. My brother-in-law was a trucker for many years. He took his stepson, my sister's son, with him on one run. They were somewhere in the rural south and hit a power telephone line that was too low across the road. It seems hard to believe, but it actually yanked one of the telephone poles out of the ground and it crashed through the passenger window and out the windshield and stuck there. Neither of them were seriously hurt. My nephew just got a few minor scratches from flying glass. Coming upon Big Butter Jesus at 3 AM in the fog startled me. Scariest was waking up getting thrown all over the sleeper. Co-driver got hit by a car going 80 miles per hour the wrong way down the interstate. I can't believe it's not Jesus. Broker here with a light-hearted story. We had a driver who delivered a truckload of cookies for us. When he got to delivery, the receiver called us and said everything was fine except the driver ate like 5 cases, not boxes, cases of the cookies. It was a pain in the butt to deal with at the time, but looking back I can just imagine this guy showing up covered in crumbs, asking for a glass of milk. I work in sales and deal with different shops that service Class 8 trucks. And a couple of weeks ago one of my customers got a call from a trucking company they service, asking if they could tow in a truck to keep on their lot while they found a company willing to handle the mess inside. It turns out that the driver pulled into a rest stop and killed himself with a gunshot to his head. This was a sleeper truck, one that the driver sleeps in, so it's possible that he was dead for quite some time before he was found, since you couldn't see into the back area of the cab. After getting towed in, the truck sat in the service department for about a week, with the windows all covered. When police put up tarps alongside accidents, often we can see over them. I wish they would use taller tarps. I always made sure not to look, but every once in a while you would see lots of blood or a stretcher with a sheet drawn over a body. Once it was only a small lump. I tell myself it was probably someone's leg. That seems a better plausible alternative. Every day was a countdown to a WTF moment. Pushy lot lizards, a few crooked cops, my dispatcher sending me to the wrong state, or the constant flow of cars trying to kill you. Loved machines, but frick that job. My dad was driving down some interstate when it started raining really bad. He couldn't see more than a few feet in front of him, so he pulled off somewhere and waited for the rain to pass. While he's waiting, he sees a sports car drive by, followed not too far behind by a dump truck going way too fast for a large truck in those conditions. Finally the rain passes, so he keeps going. A few miles up the road he comes upon a massive wreck. Apparently the dump truck had slammed right into the back of the sports car. There were 4 college kids in the car coming back from spring break. He goes to see if anyone's injured and it's a bloodbath. The 2 guys in the back died instantly. The driver died on the way to hospital. The guy in the passenger seat survived, but he had to have both his legs amputated because they had been crushed by the dashboard. The dump truck driver survived with pretty much no injuries. A state trooper shows up and sees the wreckage. He goes up to the truck driver and punches him in the face. None of the other drivers said anything. You never even realize how dangerous some jobs really are until you read stuff like this. My grandma turns 100 in June this year. Likes to tell this story about my grandfather. They owned a farm and would deliver produce all over. Grandpa would load up a truck, I'm guessing something like a big 2-ton flatbed, and make deliveries from their home in southeastern Minnesota to Milwaukee, Madison, but most notably Chicago. During Prohibition, while making a big delivery to Chicago, he got stopped by a bunch of gangsters in the city, held at gunpoint while they made sure he wasn't hoarding moonshine. When they confirmed it was just produce, he was allowed to go on his way. Turns out they were Al Capone's men. Pulled over to stay the night near the Arizona Welcome Center on I-40. I hear a light knocking on my door. An old lady wearing nothing but an oversized sweatshirt is standing outside. I roll down my window and ask what's up. In the tiniest, creepiest little voice she says that there's something in her car making a weird noise and that she needs help with it. I didn't help her. I'm not a trucker, but I was listening to Z100 radio show and they were talking about a video of a guy who was caught jacking off to pee while driving, and then a trucker called in and said that he's seen so many people doing that, men and women, because truckers are so high up they can see everything you're doing in your car. Dad's a trucker. Anyway, one night my dad was driving about a mile behind a guy he knew. He got on his radio and told the guy to be careful around the curve. It was really sharp and had a blind bend. He got back a yeah alright. When he got to the curve, the other guy's semi was in the ditch. He got to the straightaway, parked and rushed back to help the guy. When he got there, the steering wheel was through the guy's chest. His organs were everywhere. And that's why airbags are a thing. To add a happy story, a friend's brother was a trucker. He had a car drive up next to him and throw a pillowcase in front of his truck, thinking there might be something in it that would pop his tires. Apparently this happens somewhat regularly. He avoids it and pulls over to remove it from the road so it doesn't cause any accidents. Turns out it was full of kittens. All of them survived and he actually kept a kitten and it became his travel buddy for the remainder of his trucking career. My squad leader told me about this one time when the truck in front got hit by an IED, and due to the risk they had to leave them and reverse out of the area. An RPG hit them as they reversed. It didn't do much damage, so they continued. After about 2 hours of reversing, tight mountain roads, they almost drove right off the cliff. Everyone got out and one guy took the risk of getting all the trucks further down, so that only one guy got killed if the truck would fall down. Everyone calls him Cliffy now, and he received a medal but declined. Instead he asked it to be given to the wife of the guy who hit the IED. He didn't make it. Cliffy quit 5 weeks ago and now works at a gas station. I initially read that as given the wife of the guy who hit the IED and thought Cliffy has a fantastic but morbid sense of humor. Last year my in-laws, who team drive a truck, had a head-on collision that killed the other driver. It was a 2-lane highway and the other driver pulled out to pass. Rather than move back into his lane when he saw there wasn't enough time, he doubled down and sped up. My in-laws veered onto the shoulder to avoid him. He moved to the shoulder too. My in-laws put their truck into the ditch and so did the other driver. They hit head-on in the ditch hard enough to tear the engine out of their semi-truck. It was almost like the other guy was trying to kill himself. Thankfully the RCMP explained to them that when drivers are faced with something like this they tend to stare at the hazard and instinctively steer towards what they are looking at. Bonus fact, they were hauling explosives that thankfully did not explode. I saw a coiled up football scarf on the ground at a service station in the UK. It was German team either Werder Bremen or Wolfsburg and I thought to myself, that's a bit odd to be here. I went over and tried to pick it up and wrapped up inside was the biggest turd I've ever seen. I got the frick out of there and am now suspicious of the diehards of most Bundesliga fans I meet. When I was getting my forklift certification I met the trucker lady who told me this story. Her agricultural company was filling her trailer full of lettuce. It was in a huge lot where they were filling lots of trucks, so the whole thing was being coordinated by these two managers. They were husband and wife. It was a rush job, so there were forklifts zipping about, full steam ahead. They fill up her truck, she leaves, and later that day she keeps getting calls and CB messages being passed around that they can't find the wife anywhere. They thought she had left her husband and taken off with one of the drivers. No one knew anything. When they finally unloaded her truck, they found what had happened. The wife had got caught in front of a forklift as it was loading a giant crate of lettuce into the truck. It had carried her all the way to the front of the trailer and crushed her against the inside. Definitely dead. It was a really sad story, especially as the trucker lady described how destroyed the husband was. I was not prepared to hear it at 7 AM on a Saturday before 12 hours of forklift certification. A while ago, some guy posted a story about a trucker who had a trained monkey with one of those mini wooden baseball bats that beat the crap out of a pit bull. Spent the past 10 years as a truck driver, so I've had my share of stories, but I'll share the strangest. Coming out of our Washington State terminal, I was asked to take one of our drivers to Southern California. Not a big deal, I've done it before, but let's meet our friend Gibson. You see, Gibson here seemed very normal, cheerful and a delightful person to keep you company while talking your ear off. However, this all changes once the sun went down. Gibson here turns to me and says, "Hey, can you pull over for a sec? I need to ward off the snake people." This is where my brain doesn't quite process this and I say, "What?" He repeats the same line and here's where my spidey sense tells me if Gibson doesn't ward off his snake people, I'm going to have a bigger problem than this guy's cookie getting flipped. So I pull over and he gets out. Now here comes the weird. He does this dance in front of my headlights. All I can say is he certainly does his snake warding dance. Now here's my dilemma. This guy obviously has a few fries short of a happy meal, but I was asked to drive his butt to SoCal. Unfortunately, I think too long about this and Gibson is sitting again next to me in the passenger seat as nothing has happened. I drive 1,200 miles without stopping and Gibson gets to his new truck in SoCal and I never give another person I don't know a lift. Ever. You have been visited by the Fantastic Patrol. Comment 911 fantastic so that you are always protected. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.